volunteers for organizing today's forum. Questions have been prepared by the organizers and the League of Women Voters. You, the audience, again, are invited to submit questions through the chat function at the bottom of your screen. You've only got a couple of minutes to get those questions in. The chat box will be open for only a couple of minutes. They may be blended into a new question or combined into kind of one question if we get many on the same subject. Now I want to introduce your candidates and go over the ground rules with them. Our candidates are California 30th District State Senator Holly Mitchell and Los Angeles 10th District City Council Member Herb Wesson. For the candidates, you have agreed to answer the first questions with a 90-second response. You'll get 30 seconds for a follow-up, and the first response for each question will rotate. You'll have the audience questions. Those will just get a 1-minute response, no follow-up. And if there's time, we'll have some additional sponsor questions, but I think we'll move on from that. And you'll have 2 minutes each for a closing statement. The candidates have agreed to discuss the issues, make no personal attacks, and they have agreed to abide by the time rules. The timekeeper will alert the candidates with a countdown clock. You see it up there on the screen. And by a coin toss, Senator Mitchell will be the opening statement and followed by Councilman Wesson, who will have the final word. So there was no opening statement. I'm sorry, we'll answer the first question. And so now let us go to the first question, and this will go to Senator Mitchell. And then Councilman Wesson will have the opportunity to also speak. This is on criminal justice and the sheriff. The goal of the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission and Office of Inspector General is to facilitate public transparency and accountability. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, what is your assessment of the progress of these entities in achieving these goals? What changes do you feel are needed to help facilitate the sheriff's cooperation and ensure accountability? And this one goes to you, Senator, first.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and good evening, everyone. Every corner of my current district that I represent in the state Senate, when I talk to residents, this is the first question that comes up. People are afraid, they are tired of the brutality that we are experiencing and witnessing in the Sheriff's Department, and they're even more fatigued with regard to the lack of leadership exemplified by our current sheriff. There is a Sheriff's Oversight Commission. I'm proud to have just voted for a bill at the end of session to empower all counties to have an Oversight Commission, and more importantly, give the Oversight Commission subpoena power to put some real teeth in their oversight capabilities. Our current sheriff has completely ignored our Oversight Commission, has not shown up when they've asked him to come when he's been summoned. He has refused the Inspector General access to crime scenes where law enforcement have been involved in the use of excessive force and in the murder of some of our county residents. And so we have a real problem on our hands. We have a problem because, as you know, he's a duly elected official. However, the Board of Supervisors does have oversight over the budget. His department is a part of our $37 billion LA County budget. And so we're going to have to really work and think strategically about how we express to him our collective disappointment and fear with regard to his lack of leadership of that very important, large, significant department.
Thank you, Senator. Councilman, same question to you about the goal of the Sheriff's Civilian Oversight Commission and changes that you might feel are necessary.
Well, hey, everybody. It's a big pleasure to be with you tonight, even though we had some technical difficulties. We need to appoint another sheriff or either get rid of this guy, elect another one or put in place a system where we can appoint a sheriff. I do think it's time for us to talk about changing the way sheriffs are selected. And definitely this individual, that sheriff now, has let us know that changes need to be made. If he were applying to be the chief of police for the city of Los Angeles, he would have never made it through the vetting process. Government, every leg of government, in order for it to deliver the services that the community wants, needs, and expects, they have to work together. He has demonstrated that he cannot work with anyone. I know there have been calls for him to resign, the reality of the situation is he's never going to resign. I do think that when the people, like Ms. Mitchell said, the Board of Supervisors do have control over budgetary concerns, and he reports to the people. And when people put in place a civilian oversight, and he won't even respond to the people that he works for, it is time for him to go, and it is time for us to figure out how we make that happen.
And Ms. Mitchell, you have 30 seconds if you would like to respond to that, whether you think that this should be something that can be done sooner than later.
I support the assertion made by two of the city members of the Board of Supervisors who've called for his resignation. I completely support that. And I think we have to be really clear. The citizens, when you hear the term oversight committee, that's what our expectation is. The city of LA doesn't have one. The Charter Amendment C that passed in 2017 created a separate kind of entity that, again, provides less access to transparency and accountability for law enforcement. So we need to be true to what we say, make sure that the residents of the city and county understand how we choose to protect them from police officers who use excessive force. We all know all police aren't bad, but those bad apples need to be disciplined.
And 30 seconds for you, Councilman.
Well, I totally disagree with the senator on this. What Measure C did, it gave us an opportunity to change a system that hadn't been changed in 25 years. And whenever civilians are engaged, things are better. There used to be requirements where you had to have 7 years experience in a very limited area. We cut that from 7 years to 2 and expanded the area of experience. The ACLU gave us 16 recommendations. We instituted 11. Before a cop could retire and be part of this, now they have to wait 5 years.
Thank you. We're going to move on to the next question. This is still under criminal justice and the sheriff. This question for both of you, lawsuits against the county for misconduct of the sheriff's department personnel and other issues are costing taxpayers multiple millions of dollars. If elected, how would you address these ongoing challenges? And on a larger scope, and as permitted by your role as county supervisor, what will you do regarding criminal justice reform? This is 90 seconds, and this one starts with Councilman Wesson.
I think we're doing that right now. We saw millions of people take to the street in this country demanding change to systems that have historically held back women and have historically not afforded people of color the types of fairness and justice that other individuals receive. So at the city of LA, working with Black Lives Matter, we have begun to reimagine public safety. Now, I don't want to scare anybody. We're not talking about abolishing the police, but we are talking about using trained mental health professionals to handle nonviolent calls. The winds in this country blow from the west to the east, and when we do this in Los Angeles, I think that there are cities throughout this nation that are going to look at our model. Imagine this, individuals that have mental health issues, homeless issues, substance issues are being dealt with by mental health professionals. Talking them down, I think that we will eliminate a lot of these bad outcomes. And if you want, it's not about the police as much as it is about the system of policing. And that's what we're looking to reform right now.
Thank you. Senator Mitchell, your turn for the 90 seconds.
Thank you. I'm very proud of my 10-year track record as a city member of the legislature and the work I've done around criminal justice and juvenile justice right sizing. I have either authored or co-authored really all of the landmark pieces of legislation that California has led this nation in. We have a situation where every failed system uses the criminal justice system as a backdrop. When our education system fails, when our mental health system fails, when our access to affordable housing and a job that pays you a livable wage fails, it falls on our criminal justice system. Our previous sheriff was famous for saying that the LA County Jail was the largest mental health facility in the country. We should all be embarrassed by that. And so I was proud to support your Assembly member, Sydney Kamlager, for a bill she introduced, the Crisis Act, because the councilman is right. We have to start standing up systems to prevent people from falling in the cracks of law enforcement. Police aren't trained as mental health experts or housing placement officers. We have to take that social work off of their plates and give that to trained professionals and leave the true work of policing, law and order, to law enforcement. I think that there are some law enforcement officers who need to be trained or maybe just no longer in the field. They give the rest of the sector a bad name. And so we have to be clear about who's hired for these jobs, that they get adequate training, implicit and explicit bias training. And again, they are not social workers and we shouldn't expect them to be.
Thank you. In the follow-up, I'm going to ask both of you to address specifically the issue of lawsuits against the county for misconduct in the Sheriff's Department. And Mr. Wesson, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, well, this is a broad topic. And I think when you reimagine public safety and have the right people doing the right thing, automatically you're going to see a reduction in the lawsuits, because the lion's share of them deal with some kind of excessive force or a situation where they believe that law enforcement did something that they weren't supposed to do. Once we work this out, and we've got to do it together, I think that not only will it be more cost effective, you'll have police officers doing what they're supposed to do.
All right, and Ms. Mitchell, I'll give you a few extra seconds to the same question, though, to be more specific about the lawsuits and sheriff's misconduct.
In the past year alone, $81 million of your tax dollars have gone to lawsuits as a result of lost lawsuits in the Sheriff's Department. $81 million. Just imagine how those dollars could have been redirected. For example, if Measure J passes and the county board is responsible for front-loading resources to community-based interventions, how far we would go with that. And so we've got to be very clear, it's about leadership. And if this sheriff refuses to be a leader, hold his department accountable, weed out the gangs and all the bad actors that are continuing to reign terror over some segments of the community, not the county as a whole, then we have to step up and figure out a way that perhaps he or the department can separately, as individuals, be held accountable for their bad behavior. Okay. Taxpayers shouldn't have to bail them out.
Thank you. Senator, stick with us, because we're going to move on with you answering the next question on the next topic of homelessness. And the question is this: homelessness is a problem here in Los Angeles, and the problem is growing. What changes would you implement right now to address the problem, and what would be your timeline to accomplish it? This is 90 seconds.
Tragically, the current crisis that we're experiencing didn't happen overnight. I attribute it to a slow boil, and multiple levels of government took their turn turning up the heat that has created this moral crisis we're all experiencing, with tens of thousands of Angelenos, women and children, families who are unhoused all across the county, the vast majority of which hail from the 2nd District. H and HHH was a brilliant strategy that the county and the city partnered on, but I think they crafted it too narrowly. Those dollars can only be used for brand new construction, and we can't build our way out of this problem quick enough. We have to think broadly. We have to keep people where they are and use many of the creative models nationally, rapid rehousing, look at income supports so people can stay where they are. The county hasn't adjusted the general relief grant amount in 30 years. So people can't live off of $251 a month. And so rapid rehousing, new construction, and again, figuring out ways in which we can use the existing infrastructure. The board and care facilities are closing their doors daily. Tragically, neither of those funding sources can be used to reinforce the board and care industry. Also, the Prop 63 funds in the Department of Mental Health, they need some flexibility. If people are on the streets and suffering from mental illness, we should be able to use Prop 63 funds to house them as well. I think there are ways that we can look at existing funds in a creative, more dynamic way.
Thank you. Same question to you, Councilman, on homelessness and with the growing problem. What's your timeline too, Councilman, to accomplish this?
Well, what we have to do is act and act quickly. The city and the county did put in place Measure H and Measure HHH and we are building housing to put folk in. But the reality of the situation is that it seems like every time we take 10 people off the street, they're replaced by 13 more. So that would lead me to believe that we really need to begin focusing our attention on closing the spigot that allows people to flow into homelessness in the first place. And the way that you do that is by putting together a real renters assistance program where you give individuals financial counseling so that they can stabilize their budgets and stay in their home. We give them small grants. It is much cheaper to give someone a $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 grant instead of building a new apartment that's going to cost $600,000. It makes sense to retrain people so that they can find work in today's economy. And another thing that we have to do, we've got to build affordable housing and build it now, because that's one of the main contributors to individuals falling into homelessness as well.
And a follow-up question to Senator Mitchell, as far as homelessness goes, what about any ideas on how you could clean up the streets more rapidly?
You know, Adrian, it occurred to me as I'm looking at these wildfires across all of California, and when something like that happens, a natural disaster, the cavalry rolls in. Red Cross, everyone is there, and overnight, I've seen it, I've toured with the governor and the insurance commissioner to see support services stood up immediately where people have housing and food, and resources are there to direct them how to get help. This is the same kind of crisis. And we need to stand up immediately, support services to move people off the streets where they die 2 and 3 on average a day, into a temporary controlled environment where their immediate needs are met. You know, congregate settings are dangerous because of COVID, but living on the street is dangerous every day. And we have to treat it like the crisis that it is.
Thank you, Senator. And follow-up question, same for you, Councilman, about cleaning up the streets and helping get people off the street in some more of an emergency fashion.
You know, I would love to have some kind of emergency declaration, and a bunch of angels came to the city of Los Angeles and just cleaned it up. But the reality of the situation is we are under some court restrictions. So we are literally limited by the court in what we can and what we cannot do. So at this point in time, we are cleaning up around the sites, in front of the site, behind them, and beside them. But because of CDC warnings, you have to be very careful when you move people. Now, if we can take these individuals and actually move them into a facility, then we can clean those places. But we have restrictions from the court.
Thank you. I sort of make that a whole separate question. I probably shouldn't have. We've got to move on to the next topic. This is health and safety versus the economy. This 90-second answer will start with you, Councilman Wesson. In the midst of this historic COVID-19 pandemic and economic crisis, we are struggling to choose the right leadership and direction. How would you balance the need for health and safety against economic sustainability, Councilman?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head when you use the word balance. And that's what we have to do. We have to find the balance. But I think one of the reasons why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in is because it's like we have 50 different countries within the United States of America working together. We need to have a unified strategy that is a federal strategy. And I would just say this with my few seconds that are left. The most important election ever is this election. And in order for us to get a handle on COVID, give the people the services that they need, and improve the economy, there has to be a change in the White House so that we have individuals that we can actually work with and have a conversation that's balanced, where we blend science with the needs of the economy. Right now, that is not occurring. If you look at the country of Korea, they've had like 420 something deaths. We've had over 200,000. And that is because that national government worked with its regional government, and that's how they were able to get everything under control and to move forward. So for us, this has to be state, county, feds, all working together.
All right, thank you, Councilman. And the same question to you, 90 seconds, Senator, about balancing health and safety, economic sustainability in this COVID-19 pandemic and the economic crisis it's bringing.
You know, Adrian, it reminds me of what the stewards and stewardesses say when you travel. If the oxygen mask falls down, put yours on first and then help the other people with you. Listening to Dr. Ferrer, LA County's public health director, it's clear this is an airborne virus. And if we don't check that, we will never be able to return our children to school and business as usual. And so we have got to deal with the public health aspect of this pandemic that will give us license to return to restoring our economy. In the meantime, that's the function of government. And I'm proud that even though the federal government did come in with the Paycheck Protection Plan, in areas where the federal government fell short, the state and local governments filled in. And so we've had through the iBank supports for nonprofit organizations, our churches, small businesses, even micro businesses run by people who didn't qualify for the Paycheck Protection Plan. So every level of government has to step up, but I think we will continue to be in this push and pull where we will never fully reopen if we don't check our numbers significantly. LA County has done better. We're surrounded by other counties who haven't. But even in terms of economic recovery, people can't go back to work and run their businesses if their children aren't in school and in a safe place where they can learn comfortably. We have to check the public health element first.
Thank you, Senator. 30 seconds for you, Councilman. Just a really quick question too about the whole idea of local businesses and anything more could or should the county be doing for them and helping them in some fashion if there isn't going to be any help coming from the feds?
Well, you know, I'm torn as to how I want to try to answer this question first. But I will say this. In the city of LA, we immediately put up approximately $40 million to help our small businesses. It may sound like a lot, but it is not. But we do have to have a structured policy where with financial backing to help small businesses come back. But again, the state budget, and Ms. Mitchell can speak to it more than I, we're dependent upon the federal government to give us money. If not, we're going to have additional cuts because we're not getting aid from them. We got to get a government we can work with.
And stay with us, but you're going to answer the first question on this round on economic development. This segues very nicely. I love the way that works out sometimes. This is your 90-second answer on commerce in the 2nd District. How do you plan to facilitate local business people and commercial developers to continue to grow the local economy and address Baldwin Hills Plaza and Marlton Square?
Well, you know, what's important for us is to put in place common sense ways that we can, number one, help our businesses in this region survive. And number two, we've got, like at the County of Los Angeles, they have the Economic Resiliency Task Force. So I'm really looking forward to working with them, sharing ideas as to what we can do. But again, and I don't want people to say, oh, he's putting everything on the federal government. But if there was a change in the federal government, we would be having a serious conversation right now about some kind of jobs and small business program that would put FDRs to shame, where we would put people in this country back to work with a livable wage, with health benefits, and then we could work on our infrastructure and create green jobs. As we're doing that, you have to help the small businesses become afloat as well, because they're the backbone of this nation. So if we can get our people working, then it's much easier for us to give small business the things that they need to survive.
Thank you, Senator. The same question for you, balancing the local business people and commercial developers, growing the local economy. You've got 90 seconds.
I think the second district has had a real resurgence, if you will, in terms of small business. When you think about the Crenshaw corridor and what that will become when the metro train is finished, when you think about the Vermont Slauson corridor, when you think about the West Adams development, the new restaurants all along West Adams, as well as what Culver City has experienced. That's a perfect example that became Silicon Beach West, and when Google came in there. I happen to believe that South LA is the next great horizon. It's already begun with the biotech industry that's in Culver City and in neighboring areas because they want to be in close proximity to institutions of higher learning. What's important to me is, unlike what happened in Culver City, that when we attract new industry into South LA and other parts of the second district, that we make sure that the residents of the district are the ones who get those prime employment, contracting, and business owning opportunities. I think what happened in Culver City was Culver City blew up with Silicon Beach West, and workers were attracted to Culver City for the job. So we in government are going to have to be clear about our expectations when we engage in these partnerships to make sure that we take care of our people first, that we work with our institutions of higher learning. Trade Tech is in the district, Cal State Dominguez Hills, West LA, great community colleges, that they are creating training programs to help people be prepared for the jobs of the future. Working with labor organizations to make sure that as the workforce changes, that their members are trained for the new work that lies ahead.
Thank you. And one quick question back on the follow-up on this, Councilman. You want to be specific about Baldwin Hills Plaza and Marlton Square?
Okay, well, if I could just say this, I'm so glad that West Adams and a lot of the areas in the district that I represent are the areas that are on the rise. That is not an easy task. We've worked very hard. The LA Chamber of Commerce indicated that we have created 13,000 new jobs since 2012, and we've had a 33% increase in our wages. We have been working hard to try to take this Marlton Square and develop it. Sorry.
All right. Well,
maybe I can come up with a way to do it later.
I know. And 30 seconds for you, Senator.
You know, I grew up in Leimert Park and grew up going to Shelley's Tall Girl in Marlton Square and Tom McCann for my shoes. You know, that's prime real estate right in the heart of a high income earning zip code. It is criminal that the developments that have come and failed, that we've not been able to land something that will stick, that honors the community that surrounds us. The current dynamic with the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Mall, has it sold? Are they private developers? Is the county retirement pension system, LaSera, actually buying in? It's cloaked in secrecy. The community doesn't know, and they don't want another Marlton Square scenario where that property sits vacant for decades.
Thank you. We're going to move on to this next one, which is employee benefits and pensions. And Senator Mitchell, you'll take the first 90-second answer on this. Just to give you a heads up, we have 2 more of these questions, and then I'm going to turn it over to John Heath because there have been viewer questions coming in. And we're going to figure out how we're going to get this to your closing statements before the 8 o'clock hour. So we're working on this here. So let's move on to employee benefits and pensions. This question, Senator, payments for public employee pensions and retiree health care benefits are putting so much pressure on local government budgets that the county has to choose between service cuts and raising taxes. The total cost to the county has more than tripled since 2003 and is far and above any benefits offered in the last 20 to 25 years in comparable careers in the private sector. What do you plan to do to fix this ticking time bomb, Senator?
I appreciate that. That's an issue that we've had to confront at the state level with PERS, with an aging population. And, you know, the county is one of the top employers in the southern region with almost 100,000 employees. And what we've had to do at the state level is just acknowledge, while we want to honor public service and honor those workers, we want to honor labor negotiated contracts, we recognize that over time, we're going to have to change these plans. I believe in a defined pension, but I think that we're going to have to make some changes like we've done at the state level. We have to honor the current employees and the pension agreements that they had when they were hired. But as new people come in, they may not get as expansive a pension plan as their predecessors. They may have to contribute a little more. The county also should follow suit what the state did, that when the going was good and we were in the black and the state was doing well, our general fund was healthy, we paid down future debt for our PERS pension. And so that saved us billions of dollars in the long run. So I think that there are a number of ways that local governments are going to have to consider this and acknowledge that we have to honor current employees, but we might have to fashion different expectations as people come in. You know, my parents met as county workers, and there was this whole notion about getting a good government job and what that meant. And they both had wonderful retirements in their golden years because of their lifelong public service. I support that and get that, but it's very expensive. Providing health care coverage for these employees costs a bunch of money too.
Thank you. And Councilman, same question for you on employee benefits, pensions, and it's being described as a ticking time bomb.
Well, you know what? I don't want to say this is something that we have to do in the future. This is something that I did as president of the Los Angeles City Council already, and we did it 3 times. And it's hard work. You have to sit down with our labor partners, eyeball to eyeball, and negotiate with them. So we did put in place protections that are saving the residents of the city of LA billions of dollars over the next 30 years. We created a system that still protects the agreement with the current employees, but there was a date. Individuals that became city employees after that received a different type of pension benefit. And that is not easy when you have, you know, basically right now we're looking at all of the essential workers that have kept this country going through the pandemic, to look at them and tell them that you gotta give up this and that you gotta reduce that. That is a hard job. It takes leadership, and it takes an individual that has the ability to bring people together and get it done. And I've done that 3 times, saving the city of Los Angeles billions.
Senator, the councilman is talking about a tiered pension plan. Do you agree with that? 30 seconds in follow-up.
Absolutely. And again, as I said, as chair of the budget committee at the state level, we've done that, but we've also been creative in terms of how we can save money and figuring out how to pay against that future debt, to be very strategic. We worked with the state's controller and the treasurer to come up with a methodology and an algorithm that worked for us. And so I think that there are multiple strategies that we can use, but we can't lose sight that the function of government is to provide services, and people provide services. So we have a responsibility to continue to work to attract the best and the brightest to government service, because that's how we get good government in the end. And so while it's important that we manage those costs, it's also important that we honor defined pensions and make sure that we keep government workers and county workers whole throughout the course of their career.
In response from you, Councilman.
Well, you know, you have to be able to have a very honest dialogue. And as long as there is a conversation going on, the opportunity to resolve it exists. Before I was elected president of the council, this pension arrangement, changing tiers, making adjustments, nobody would even talk about. Within the first 4 months of my presidency, I was able to bring everybody in the room, and we worked out something with every bargaining unit within the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you. And our final round from me, and then I'll be passing it to John. This last question, this is the 90-second answers. This goes to corruption and campaign finance. And Mr. Wesson, you'll be answering this question first for 90 seconds. In light of the recent investigations of local elected officials, what should be done to protect the public trust What can be done to prevent labor unions, developers, and other special interests from using independent expenditure committees to unfairly influence local elections? Councilman.
Well, nothing eats at we elected officials more than when someone violates the public trust, because that is the backbone of really how we get things done. And when that occurs, it adversely affects all of us. I know that a couple of the things that I think that I would immediately do is we need to look at some kind of real campaign reform policy within the county of Los Angeles. In the city of Los Angeles, we have an ethics commission. We at the county would need to build our own type of ethics commission. These things create more transparency and public trust. Unfortunately, you can't legislate integrity, but I think that as open as we can make things and afford individuals the opportunity to run for office where money is not the paramount thing that they need. Like in the city, if you are a commissioner, you can't contribute. If you are a developer now, you can't contribute, depending on where you are. So we've got to put all of these things in place. However, since the beginning of time, we've had problems at every level, every now and then. And you just can't legislate integrity.
All right, Senator, 90 seconds for you again on public trust and special interests and independent expenditures. This list of questions in 90 seconds.
Adrian, my constituents are sick and tired of picking up their paper every day and reading about yet another name, particularly right now, currently at the city council level, who are basically engaging in pay to play. Who are engaging in backroom deals and backroom negotiations that don't appear to serve the general public. We talked about some of these developments, Marlton Square and Baldwin Hills, and other developments where it appears that contracts were given to developers who didn't develop the land. Then, a new plan was identified, and yet we still don't know where the public money went, and we still don't have a development. I always have and continue to support public campaign finance, because what we ought to be able to do is to elect people not only with integrity and are willing to be transparent, but who have the skill set as policymakers, not just good campaigners or fundraisers and handshakers, but people who have the capacity to do the work we need them to do as elected officials. And so what we cannot afford right now, given the critical work the county is going to have to face as a result of COVID-19, we can't afford for the public to assume that what happened at the city of LA can happen at the county. Trust in government is critical. People already have lost a sense of confidence in law enforcement, and you can't have public safety and trust in government if people don't feel seen, heard, honored, and respected, and they don't have a level of transparency around how decisions are made. Backdoor deals are a thing of the past, and people don't want that anymore. They've made that crystal clear.
For a follow-up, Councilman, 30 seconds on this.
Okay, county doesn't have an ethics commission, they have weak campaign laws. We need to create a ethics commission there that has some teeth. I do want to say that these things happen, they infuriate us. Happen at the federal level. Just a few years ago, we had problems at the state level. Now we're having problems at the city level. But it wasn't until I did become the councilman that I'm proud of Marlton Square, because we have a brand new state-of-the-art Kaiser Permanente hospital there that I think will set a standard for areas of color throughout the second district.
Thank you, Councilman. Senator, last word to you for 30 seconds.
I would just say that the city does have an ethics commission, and the work of the commission didn't prevent what we have seen happen right now with 2 city members, staff, lobbyists, fundraisers, developers. Having a commission didn't prevent what we just saw happen with an ongoing FBI investigation. We can't afford that at the county level. There's too much work to be done, and the residents of the second district have to have full and complete confidence that the person they elect is going to be transparent and operate with complete integrity.
Thank you, Senator. Now I'm going to turn it over to John Heath. John's going to ask you the question, and I've got my scorecard going here, so I'll direct the questions to you. But for these answers from viewers, you'll give a 1-minute answer. There won't be rebuttals or responses.
Gotcha.
This is, I guess we'd call this the lightning round. And I think, John, we have about 5 or 6 minutes here for this. Go ahead.
Okay.
I'll talk fast. Thanks, Adrian. So this is from Carolyn. She says, my son is an African-American male with no mental health issues that has experienced abuse of power from law enforcement. How will, including LA County sheriffs, how will you address these issues proactively as the next county supervisor?
And this goes to Senator Mitchell first.
Carolyn, I too am a mother of an African-American son who's Gen Z. And so every time he walks out that door, I hold my breath. And that's not the way to live. I've grown weary of that experience. And so we have to step up and make clear to this sheriff that the ongoing excessive use of force and abuse is not acceptable in our community. We have to make sure that we have accountability standards to hold law enforcement to. What we saw in Kentucky with a grand jury that couldn't find any rulings against the murder of Breonna Taylor is unacceptable. And so we have to have a DA that's willing to work hard, hold law enforcement accountable, and bring charges when appropriate. Charter Amendment C rolled back our opportunity to do that at the city level because the Board of Rights only, they're not an oversight commission, the Board of Rights basically only decides if the police chief's ruling about penalizing law enforcement is excessive or not. So we need real oversight, we need real accountability, we need real independent inspectors to be able to go in there and do the job that the general public expects them to do.
I know that it's hard to do this in a minute. Councilman, same to you, 1 minute answering this question from the viewer.
Well, I have to go back to reimagining public safety. A committee that I chaired just last week voted for us to put in place, like I said, trained, unarmed professionals to handle a lot of the nonviolent calls. I truly believe that once we go down this road, then we will be beginning to put in place the types of things that will change the mindset of policing forever. When individuals, if they're under the influence, instead of being concerned about going to jail, that they're confronted with individuals that are going to take them home and then maybe give them a citation where they have to be in court in 45 days because they were drunk at public. So I think what we have to do is take that same mindset that we're doing in the city to the county of LA and let them know that change is coming.
All right, that question now, John, if you pose it, this is the 1 minute question, and then it will go to Councilman Wesson as soon as you're done.
This relates to the Inglewood oil field. What's more important to you and why? Enforcing stringent limits on distance between residences and oil wells, or shutting down oil fields and cleaning up the contaminated land?
Well, you know, we are only caretakers on this earth. So we have a responsibility to make sure that our kids and their kids can take full advantage of the world that we had. I'm the only candidate in this race that has actually closed down an oil facility, closed it, cleaned it, and now we're building affordable housing there. So I think moving forward, you want to have somebody that knows how to get these types of things done. When I was first elected to the assembly, John, I don't know if you know this, they wanted to take a power plant and build it in Baldwin Hills. I worked with the community. We stopped that. Senator Murray and I put together over 40 million. We bought that land, and now it is the Baldwin Hills Scenic Overlook, one of the most phenomenal views in the county of Los Angeles. So I have a track record of working with the community and getting things done and recognize the importance of saving the environment.
I'm going to give Senator a chance to answer this question. I'm going to try to get one more question in with you, John. So let's see if we can do it. 1 minute.
Very proud as a brand new assemblywoman to introduce 2 bills in the legislature to ban hydraulic fracturing, lost my front teeth because I couldn't get them out of the house of origin. But we've come a long way over the past 10 years with the new administration that has given a new goal for Dogger, the oversight entity. We now know which wells are fracked. I have publicly taken a position to support the set aside, but ultimately they need to be shut down. Inglewood is the largest urban oil field in the country, but we can't forget Jefferson Park and West Adams, and many that were closed temporarily and then reopened. And so it's going to require multiple levels of government working collaboratively to assert that. I'm proud of the work of the Culver City City Council in making their assertion about what area of Inglewood is in their city and what they're not going to allow to continue in their city. It's a new day with the new administration. The governor just passed via executive order his expectations that someone introduce a bill that it will eliminate fracking and inland oil drilling within our lifetimes. That's a big deal. And so we've come a long way in the last decade, and I'm very proud of where we'll go. And I hope to be a member of the Board of Supervisors to lead that effort.
All right, John, let's try to get one more.
I got one more real quick one. This relates to Prop 21 somewhat. District 2 mom and pop small landlords are being forced into foreclosure and bankruptcy as a result of having to bear the financial burden of the COVID-19 pandemic and decreasing rents and financial losses. Do you support Prop 21 or policies that put the burden on small mom and pop landlords? And if not, what type of relief to housing providers will you promote?
Senator Mitchell, this goes to you first, and if we could just keep it tight to a minute or less.
I've supported legislation at the state level to take rent control statewide because we know that incomes have not kept pace with rental costs and housing costs across this state. And so as a mom and pop owner, I understand that I need people to be able to afford the rent. And so every level of government as a result of COVID, the city, the county, and the state created protections for renters where you can't evict them if their income has been impacted by COVID. The state has also stepped up, and we understand mom and pop landlords are suffering too. And so we've put in place tax exemption measures and done all that we can at the state level to provide that support. It goes back to our earlier question. The ultimate goal is to make sure that we get healthy and well, and so our economy can recover so people can go back to work. And when they do, they have to be able to go back to work that pays them a livable wage so they can afford housing. We can't pit renters against homeowners. We have to support both because both are reliant on each other.
Councilman, you have 1 minute on this.
Well, I support rent control. I believe that it works. But we also have an obligation to do everything that we can to take care of our landlords, especially those that are mom and pop landlords. And that's the majority of them. You know, again, we need help. Rent should be canceled. There should be a program where individuals that own property have mortgage forgiveness. Until we get through this crisis, everybody kind of needs to call a timeout and come together. And that's what I hope that happens when there's a change in administration. And in the city of Los Angeles, we have put together over a $100 million fund to help mom and pop owners of properties.
All right, we have come to the point where we now come to our closing statements, and by coin toss, Councilman, you'll be the final word. So we will begin with Senator Mitchell for your 2-minute closing statement.
I'd like to thank all of the co-host organizations and everybody that stuck with us and who really have a vested interest in having a meaningful conversation about what kind of LA County we all want to grow old in and raise our children in. You know, the county is the safety net. It's the seat of government that is supposed to step up to provide help and hope to people in crisis. And we've begun to move away from this focus of the county on prosecution and incarceration. That's a good thing. If Measure J passes, the voters will send a clear message that you want investments on the front end to prevent this automatic backstop of criminal justice, and I support that 110%. The question is, in these perilous times we're living in, what kind of bold, transformative leader do we have the opportunity to elect? I am so proud of the work I've really been able to do my entire career that has trained me for the kind of work that the county oversees. My work as CEO of Crystal Stairs Child Development Organization, my 10 years in the legislature, my work as budget chairwoman of the 5th largest economy of the world, budget work that I did this year in the middle of COVID that prevented cuts to K through 14 education and helped teachers keep their jobs, that kept healthcare services going, and helped save Martin Luther King Community Hospital when the governor proposed a cut in the May revise. Someone who has the budget expertise, the relationships in Sacramento, proud to say that the LA Times has endorsed me and referred to me as the moral compass of the legislature. I think, those are attributes that I'm most proud of. And I think prepare me unequivocally to step into the leadership for the 2nd district to make sure that the residents of that district get what they need and deserve. They were suffering, many of them, in many zip codes in the district before COVID. And so while we continue to work every day to provide the emergent needs that they have now, food, shelter, etc., the role of government is to set up government systems to keep people above water in good times and bad. That's what I've always been committed to and spent my entire career working on, and I ask for your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Now your turn for the final word, Councilman Wesson.
Okay, thank you to everybody who got on the call tonight. Thank you, Adrian, for doing a great job. And John, thank you for coming in with some great questions. I want to say this. I think, you know, I may not be the best talker in the world, but I'm a doer. I get things done. When this pandemic hit, I didn't retreat to the safety of my home. I put together with the community an essential delivery program. And up to this point, we have delivered over 1 million pounds of food to people in need, 40,000 face coverings, thousands and thousands and thousands of bottles of hand sanitizer, 500,000 diapers to mothers in need. We have taken testing to the community where we go to senior facilities and we go to other apartment buildings, knock on the door, boom, stick it in their nose. 2 days later, they get a result. We have sponsored a talk show on KDLH. It comes on every Saturday from 8 to 10 that brings in experts. It tells individuals how to survive during this crisis, how to take care of your family. I think that what we need at this point in time, this is when government is supposed to rise, not shrink. This is when we're supposed to lead, not manage. I have a track record of bringing people together and getting things done regardless of what the situation may be. And let me assure you of this. There are so many of you out there that could do so much. Go to a senior housing facility, adopt a senior, bring them chicken once a month, that once a week. Do something special, because when one person does it, it spreads and anything is possible. Thank you for having me. And I'm the only candidate endorsed by the Democratic Party.
All right, thank you, Councilman. And I'm going to bring you a brief word from one of your sponsors about the League of Women Voters, celebrating its 100th birthday this year. Started right after women won the right to vote in 1920. The local league also celebrating 100 years, and more than 45 of them, the league has been open to both women and men, so you're invited to join, everyone. And finally, I'm to tell you that the deadline for registering to vote or changing your registration, if you have moved or changed your name, is October 18th. Be sure to check and make sure that you're registered at lavote.net. And now, thank you for watching my portion. I turn it back over now to David Oliver for one of the final words. David.
Thank you, Adrian. And I'd just like to quickly say thank you to the men and women that put this together behind the scenes, and that would be Marilu Guevara, Fran Lapidus, Florence Ochi, Tracy Lyons, Brian Hale, Rick Aldridge, Tony Tabor, Daryl Grayson, and of course my counterpart in the View Park, John Heath, who always does a phenomenal job. And last but not least, thank you, Adrian, for your great work on this, and most especially to our candidates. Best of luck to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. John, back to you.
thanks, David. And I know you guys have to go. I just want to again say thanks so much to the candidates, to our moderator for making tonight's forum a success despite the challenge and the late start. We encourage everyone to vote on November 3rd. Visit lavote.net if you need detailed information on ballots, polling places, and other election matters. And you can go to Where's My Ballot on the Secretary of State's website to track your ballot through the system. Go Lakers, go Dodgers. Have a good night. God bless. Thank you, guys.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye, everyone. Be safe.